afternoon. I want to take a moment of your time today to show you how to create a pattern in Illustrator. So I've gone ahead and I have opened up a 6x6 artboard in Illustrator, and I've drawn a few basic shapes. And I'm going to just to move these up kind of more in the upper right hand corner of the artboard for no particular reason. I just want it up there. And our first step is we're going to draw out some basic shapes, or say you have more complex shapes. It really doesn't matter. Whatever you want to make a pattern out of. And we're going to have them on our artboard. So that would be the first step. I've already gone through and drawn the triangle, the line, and the spiral. So I just want to select these, and I want to come up to Object, up in my menu, my Apple menu, come down to Pattern, and do Make. All right, so this is going to bring up a dialog box, and what it's saying is the new pattern has been added to the swatches panel. And anytime you make changes, it will change it in the swatch. So just want to click OK. If you're doing this often on your own personal machine, you just may not want to see the dialog box again, so you can hit Do Not Show Again. I'm going to click OK. And you can see that what it has done, it has automatically just duplicated the artwork because it has assumed that I want my tile to be the same size of the graphics that I already have. And I actually want it a little bit bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to our panel, our patterns option panel here, and I'm going to change the height. And I think the width and the height. So I'm going to do 2 by 2. And one of the things while we're here, you want to make sure that size tile to art and move tile within art is unchecked. I have created patterns in the past, so I don't know what the default is, so just make sure those two are unchecked. So now with that, we'll come back to the tile type and the name and some of these options down here, and I'll explain what these are doing. But for right now we get to actually create our pattern. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to select these, and I'm just going to drag them up into the corner again. And I want a little bit more variation than just the triangles and lines and spirals. So I can come in, even in this, in the pattern building part of Illustrator, I'm going to come in, I'm going to select a circle, and I'm just going to bring a circle in here. And I'm holding down Option or Alt on a PC and Shift to get a perfect circle and to scale it up from the center. And it's doing a stroke, but I kind of want it to be black filled instead of have the same stroke as the triangle. So what I can do is I can come right down here at the bottom of my toolbar, and I'm in the basic toolbar setting, so it's a little bit shorter. And I'm going to come up to this double-ended arrow, and as Illustrator is telling me, it's going to swap the fill and stroke. So it's going to make the fill black and the stroke nothing. So I'm just going to do that. And you can see kind of in this side one what it has done. It switched the fill and the stroke. So I think that's kind of cool. I'm going to move that down. And really what I'm doing is I'm just adding elements to what I already have to kind of play with here in a minute. The next thing I want to do is I want to show you a little trick. So I have this line here, and I'm thinking I want like some sort of asterisk or a star or something like that. So I can copy this over, and I'm holding down Option on a Mac or Alt on a PC and just clicking and dragging. You can also do Command C or Control C and Command V or Control V on a PC to copy and paste. And I'm going to take this and I want to rotate it. So I'm going to come over and I'm going to go into my toolbar and I'm going to click the rotation tool. Now you'll see that in parentheses it has an R. That means it's R on the keyboard if you want to get to it quickly. But I'm going to use that. I'm going to come back out. I'm going to zoom in on that line. Make sure I'm zoomed all the way out here. And then zoom in. And you'll see that blue crosshair kind of in the center of my line. Well, what I want to do with the rotation tool is I want to roll over that, hold down Option on a Mac, Alt on a PC, and there'll be these 3 or 4 lines that show up down at the bottom of the crosshairs. And that just indicates that another window is going to open up. So I'm going to hold down Option and click right in the center. And what that blue crosshair is kind of showing us, it's showing us where it's going to rotate the item at. I'm gonna hit cancel because it kind of moved off the center there for me. I can also, whoops, I can. So if I moved it off to the right, it would rotate it around that point. But I kind of want it as center as possible, and it defaults in the center. So if it's snapping oddly like this when you're messing with points, or you're messing with trying to get something right smack dab on the center of the line, one of the things that you can check is if you go up into view, you might want to check right down here near the bottom where it says show grid, snap to pixel, and uncheck anything that is saying snap to something. And also, if Smart Guides is turned on, Smart Guides can make your tool snap to other things on your artboard. You may want to uncheck that too. So we're going to turn off snap to pixel and zoom back out here and kind of click off and see if that solves our problem. So yeah, that allows me to get it right back on the center. And then I'm going to hold down Option or Alt on the PC, click once, and get my little window right here. So you always want to check Preview. And so you can see the degree and the change in whatever you're rotating. So I want to rotate this 20 degrees. I'm gonna come out, and sometimes you need to uncheck preview to see it. So that's gonna be the change. So instead of hitting OK here, I want to go ahead and just hit copy. So that keeps our original line, but copies and makes a copy and rotates it. So what we can do now is if we go back to our selection tool, we can hit Command D or Control D on a PC, and that's going to duplicate that action all the way around until I have this nice star or this shape. What I want to do here is I want to select all of these. I'm going to zoom back out so I can kind of see it as a collection, and I want my stroke to be a little bit less than what it is. It's at 1.6 now, and I'm going to bring it down to maybe 1 point. Again, just to make it a little bit more of a defined shape. But I'm going to zoom in. I'm zooming in by hitting Command plus or Control plus on a PC. Zoom in here. And the next thing I want to make sure I do with these lines is I want to select them just like that. A marquee. I'm basically clicking and holding my mouse and drawing a marquee around the shapes. And then I'm going to come up to Object and come down to Group. And the keyboard shortcut for this is Command G on a Mac and Control G on a PC. And so now this is one object that I can move around. And I also want it a little bit smaller. So one of the things that we need to make sure of is if you are scaling things and your strokes are staying, basically become really, really thick, we want to go into our preferences and check a few options in our preferences. So if you come up to Illustrator, and this is on a Mac, and come down to your preferences and go to General, and the keyboard shortcut is Command K. So I know preferences live in a different place on a PC. I would assume that the key command would be Control K if we're following the same pattern. I think preferences on a PC are found under Edit. But you're gonna navigate to your preferences, your program preferences. I'm gonna go to General, and if I zoom in on my general preferences, I want to make sure that scale corners and scale strokes and effects are checked. By default, they're not checked, and there are some instances where we would not want to scale our corners and not want to scale our strokes and effects. But for this project, we do. So we want to check both of those and click OK. And again, that is if you are scaling things and your strokes are remaining really kind of thick and chunky. Basically what is happening is you're making your object smaller and retaining the original point size of your stroke. So you can create something, say at like 4 by 4 inches with a 3-point stroke, which would look visually fine. But when you scale it down to an inch by an inch and it has a 3-point stroke, it may not look like the way you wanted it to look. So I'm just gonna put this here for now, or maybe over here. It really doesn't matter until after this next step. So I'm thinking now that I want to reduce my height of my tile down to 1". So it's 2 inches by 1 inch. So I'm going to come back to my panel options, and I'm going to come in here, and I'm just going to change my height to 1. And it's going to, I think, it's going to shift the tile differently. It's not going to shift it from the bottom up. It's going to shift it from the center. So we're just going to hit return, and you can kind of see how it shifted there. So all I have to do is I have to grab this artwork that I was working with and just bring it down back into the tile. And you'll also see that things have now gotten closer together. There's a lot of room over here on the left, but we'll take care of that and fill that in. So now what I want to do is I want to come into my panel options again, and I'm going to change my tile type. So right now it's in a grid, and you guys can kind of see that on screen. And I don't particularly want my things to line up exactly. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to do, I could do brick. I could do brick by column. So first one was brick by row, and then this is brick by column. So it's shifting it vertically. I could do a hex by column. So you can see here that it has changed my tile shape to a hexagon. And then you can also do hex by row. It really depends on your preference. I'm going to stick with a brick by row, and then I'm going to come down and I'm going to change my brick offset. And to be honest, I'm going to just play with these until I find a fraction that works. They all do different things. So I think, let's see if 3/5 work. I think that's going to work for me. It does allow for a really big space here, but we'll figure that out when we continue. So I'm going to zoom back out for you guys, and I'm going to continue to build out this pattern a little bit. And it's important to remember that things can actually go off the tile. So if I were to take this triangle, I'm going to hold down Option on a Mac or Alt on a PC, and I'm going to bring this up, and I'm going to fill that space. And you can kind of see that it fills it quite nicely. So I can actually arrange things off the space, and it shows you on your tile where it overlaps, where it starts to overlap. I'm just going to play with that a little bit. You know, maybe I want to rotate it. Maybe I want to rotate it a little bit, make it a little bit different. And I don't know that that specific triangle should go there. Oh, and if I want to get back, so I've changed my settings so that when I scale things, my stroke goes down, scales with the object. And this is really nice for contrast because we have a thick stroke here and then a thin stroke here. It actually helps the design to have more contrast. But say, for instance, I want to have this triangle to have the same stroke as the bigger triangle. Well, if I select the smaller triangle, and then I use my eyedropper tool, which is I on the keyboard. I'm just going to hit I. I'll either get this icon or you'll get that icon, depending on your settings. I think the default is the eyedropper tool, which is that guy. I like precision tools, so I go with something like that. And all we have to do is come down and select the, put our tool over the large rectangle and just click. And that's going to copy the point size to that smaller triangle. And so now we have some back to equal weight. I like the lighter weight, so I'm just going to undo that. Command or Control Z on a PC, Command Z on a Mac. And I just want to build out this pattern. Now, I have a lot of stuff going, a lot of individual shapes going on here. I'm going to actually bring my spiral over, maybe rotate it, maybe make it a little bit smaller, and I bring it into this corner, and maybe take my line here and drag it. I'm holding down again Option, click and drag, and then to rotate it quickly, I'm just getting to the outside of the edge of the shape, and you get a double-ended arrow, and that means you can rotate it. So you don't always have to go to the rotation tool. That's like a down and dirty way of flicking or rotating something, and it works on any shape. If I want to adjust this line, I could just drag it like that, and that will work. Whoops, hit select all. I didn't mean to do that. I meant to undo. If I want it to do something else, I can take my direct select tool, which is the white arrow tool in the toolbar, or A on the keyboard, and I can just click one point and I can drag. So if I want it to change the angle, I can do that. And then I can also move the line that way. And I still need something to fill like these areas. So maybe I come and this is very heavily with fill. This side of the pattern is very heavily black, or has black objects on it. So I might take this circle and copy it over here, and then take this circle, take my eyedropper, I on the keyboard, and just maybe select, I don't know, maybe the heavier. See how that looks. And that looks good. I apologize for the lighting. The sun went behind a cloud. So if your strokes for some reason look like this with kind of squared off ends, which is the default, and you want the rounded ends like I have, you come into your stroke panel and you zoom. If we zoom in here and we kind of look down at this stroke here or this one up here, I'm just changing the cap to a rounded cap. And that kind of makes a unique look to everything. I didn't like the way the squared off strokes look on the screen in my pattern. So then I'm going to take the star and I'm going to bring this over, make sure I'm holding down Option and not Control, or Alt on the PC. And I'm going to make that. We could bring in some rectangles, maybe another solid triangle over here, but smaller would work. Maybe, again, to add some variety to our design, we rotate it. You can hold down Shift and it will rotate it at 45-degree angles. So you can start to see how this is interacting with that circle. So maybe the circle needs to, swap places with the star, and this would also increase the balance of the design. So, and I think we need one element maybe right here. And so far we only have one spiral. But I'm just thinking out loud, and it's not that we need to repeat elements or anything, but we can just add the spiral in here, and then maybe the spiral becomes a filler. A little bit. Maybe we have one more. You'll notice I'm having a little trouble grabbing the spiral because I have to grab it right on the stroke to move it. So it can be a little bit difficult to drag around. But keep going at it and it will work. So at this point I'm pretty happy with my design. So I am going to just come up to the top. I'm going to call this, I'm going to go into the pattern options and I'm going to call it demo pattern. It has a custom name so you can customize it. And let's real quick, while we're here, let's talk about this. These copies are these preview elements that are around your working space within the pattern the pattern workspace. And basically what you're telling Illustrator to do is show me 5 by 5 in every direction, how my pattern extends out by 5 by 5. And then take and dim those copies to 70%, and also show me where my tile edge is, which is the blue on our screen. So this little section down here is just preview options, and it's really up to your personal preference. And you can see you can go all the way up to 7 by 7, 9 by 9, or 5 by 3, or things like that. I'm just going to keep it 5 by 5 for now. And so I just wanted to explain that before we jumped out. Then if you come up to this gray bar up top, you can just hit done, and you'll notice that our pattern's gone. Well, what we can do is we can actually move our original artwork off to the side, and we can take a rectangle tool, and I'm just going to make the rectangle. And then I'm going to come into my swatches, and I'm going to navigate into here, and I'm going to roll over a swatch, and it's going to give me the name. So that's our demo pattern. And I'm going to select that, and it's going to fill our rectangle. Now, it's really important to realize that you cannot change the shape of the rectangle without it distorting your pattern. Now, the one thing I haven't tried, and we're going to try right now, and I'm going to take the white arrow tool and just move that line out. So if we change the shape with the direct selection tool, the white arrow tool, and we want a bigger shape, then, and we just move like a point, we grab a point and just move it, that won't distort our pattern. Grabbing it with the black arrow tool or the selection tool and scaling it will distort our pattern. So that's a key fact to remember. So another thing to remember is that if we switch over to our circle tool and we put a circle here, and it's going to fill with the pattern, which is fine. Do another circle real quick. Didn't look proportional. So it will overlap. So if I were to move this circle, it would overlap the pattern. But also, if I were to take and make this circle filled red and then send it to the back, so I would go Object, Arrange, Send to Back, that you can control the look of how your pattern overlaps things. So right now, all our triangles are transparent. If we want it white triangles and not have this transparent look, we just go back up into our swatches and we double click on our swatch. And then all we have to do is grab whatever shape we want. Say we just want the circle to be filled white. Change the fill from none to white, or maybe it's blue. And then maybe one of these triangles, that triangle's up there. I want that fill white. And you can see it on the gray on your on your scratch board on the sides what it's doing. But then we'll hit done up in the gray bar, and you can see it now in your pattern that those shapes they have a fill on them. So they're not going to be transparent. So that is our tutorial, or that's a walkthrough on how to create a pattern in Illustrator. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you like what you see, give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more content like this, please subscribe and hit the little notification bell. Thank you and have a great day.